Hey, what's up, everybody? Shelby Young here, fitness coordinator for Hampshire Hills Athletic Club in Milford, New Hampshire. And we are coming to you live now for another nutrition discussion and education. So, once again, let's get the disclaimer out of the way. I am not a medical doctor. I am merely here to provide you with some insights, some guidelines on things that you should do in order to help with a better, healthy living style and eating style. So if you have questions, please feel free to drop them down in the live cast here. I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as I can, either in this or the next upcoming live streams. So today our topic is going to be on supplements, both their uses, their potential dangers, um, some of the interesting things about the industry that you might not know. So if you do have any health conditions that might be exacerbated or directly affected by changes in dietary intake or supplements, please make sure that you consult with your primary care physician or a registered dietitian before making any significant changes or taking anything directly. That being said, like I said, we're going to dig in a little bit today and talk about the supplement industry, which is obviously a pretty broad topic. So I'm going to do my best to give you some kind of overviews and talk about some of the things that you might not be aware of. So unfortunately, the food supplement industry is largely unregulated in the United States, and a lot of that is due to hey Kim hey Sue the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which was enacted in 1994. It was really championed by former Senator Orrin Hatch. And if you watch, there's a documentary called Bigger, Faster, Stronger where they kind of dig into this a little bit more, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But unfortunately, the way that the regulations were worded is that you don't, as opposed to like when you try to put a new medication out onto the market, you have to go through all these different drug trials, sometimes beginning with animals, and showing lots of distinctive progress and a very low fail rate before you even remotely think about progressing onto human trials. And then it has to go through further screening and discovery experimentation long before it ever makes it to the market. With supplements, it's not really that way. Instead of it, even though a food supplement a lot of times can have as significant or even more impact than a regular medication, um, you don't have to prove that a food supplement is safe in order to get it put onto the market. You have to prove that it's unsafe in order to get it taken off the market. I hope that makes sense. That normally, if you want to put a drug out on the market, you have to go through all these different roadblocks and checkpoints along the way in order to make sure that it's safe and effective and that it does what it says it's going to do. Because obviously, if you don't, people could get seriously injured or die. And there's malpractice insurance is a big thing for that, and the pharmaceutical company has been sued many, many times because of oversights in the past, or if there was just long-term side effects of particular medications that they weren't aware of at the time. I tend to be an optimist, and I would like to think that the vast majority of people, regardless of how much money they were going to stand to make, wouldn't knowingly put a product out on the market that's going to hurt or kill someone. Um, I know there are some people that are just going to cut corners and just kind of, the cheapest, most cost-effective way to get out there is what it is. Um, but luckily, with medications, there's all these different, like I said, overseeing bodies and checkpoints and regulations in the way they're going to help keep that in check. The food supplement industry doesn't have those. Um, Ephedra was a big stimulant that was kind of around back in the 90s and early 2000s. It wasn't until you started having young, healthy high school athletes dropping dead during practice sessions that ephedra finally got pulled off the market. And then it got re-released in lower doses and different forms and things throughout the years. So it's kind of an ongoing battle when it was a very heavy, very powerful stimulant, and it was just overloading kids' hearts. Hey, Chandler. So obviously that was something that really needed to be further scrutinized and purified and regulated, and if not taken off completely. Um, which is why I really get worried and upset at times when I see young kids taking like heavy doses of pre-workout, and it could be C3, Jack 3D, Hemo Rage. I don't really care what you call it. They tend to all have really violent names, like Jacked Explode, Flate, things like that. Um, and it's almost like the more violent the name is, the more effective you think it's going to be for some reason. But the majority of the times, it's just going to be caffeine, taurine, other significant stimulants like that. You might have a nitric oxide booster, which nitric oxide does have some performance benefits, but is usually going to be more kind of in the recovery phase, um, in that or in longer term endurance events. Like just a half hour weightlifting session isn't going to really benefit that much from nitric oxide. You're going to feel like it does, especially you'll look very vascular. It tends to cause expansion of the veins. It's going to make everything look push to the surface. Like if you've ever looked at close to pictures of bodybuilders where it's just veins, just extremely vascular. A lot of that is also due to extreme dieting and dehydration causes the veins to be pushed to the surface more. There we go. But when taking a nitric oxide booster, you will get some of that image as well. So you might also have things like beta alanine in it, which is an amino acid and can be beneficial for certain people in small doses. But a lot of times they'll put really high doses of that stuff in there, and that's what can give people, in addition to the heavy stimulants, it gives this feeling of itchiness, like the lips will tingle, the skin will tingle. Hey, yeah, we're getting a lot of cool people jumping in here. So feel free. We're talking about supplements today, so drop any questions you have here in the feed, and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm kind of ranting about the supplement industry in general right now. So I talked a little bit last week about multivitamins and how for some people it can be a good thing, but you want to make sure that I'm more of a fan of kind of looking at your diet as a whole. Because keep in mind, the idea of a supplement is that it's supposed to be replacing a specific thing that you're not getting enough of. And maybe you're not getting enough of it because the main food sources that you would get that from you're allergic to, or you don't have easy access to, or you just don't particularly enjoy. Thank you. I do. Linda Adonisio gave me a great haircut. Asio Hair Designs here in Milford, New Hampshire. Quick plug for my friend who does a really good job. We also have the salon here open at Hampshire Hill, so you can book appointments there too. Not you, Amy. You're in Tennessee, but hey, if you happen to come home. Where is it? Oh yeah, so multivitamins. So if you're just going to take a multivitamin, it's kind of just a shotgun approach to your diet, saying that basically like I don't want to eat a diverse array of fruits and vegetables and healthy proteins and healthy fats, so I'm just going to take a pill and hope that everything works out for the best. I hope you can kind of see why that isn't necessarily the best idea. I would rather that you got the vast majority of your foods or your vast majority of your vitamins and minerals and the things that you're trying to get from that multivitamin from whole food sources. They're usually, as much as we know about food chemistry, we don't know everything. We really have only scratched the surface on a lot of this stuff. So there's lots of interactions and chemical makeups within the foods themselves that are put there for a reason. There's been, if you look back a long time ago, there's some studies that talked about milk causing cancer. And what they were specifically looking at was casein protein, which has been shown to be potentially carcinogenic, meaning that can promote cancer. But what they also found is that whey protein, which is the other main protein found in milk, it has anti-cancer benefits. So if you, provided you're not lactose intolerant, but if you're drinking regular milk or eating yogurt or things like that, then you have the anti-cancer of whey is generally going to cancel out the potentially pro-carcinogenic standpoint of casein, which is why like supplementing with straight casein protein, not a big fan of. a lot of people tend to have significant issues with that. But once again, not everybody. Some people are going to have, will drink it by the barrel full the whole life and not have any issues. So you gotta try things out, do what works for you. I yeah, I'm more of a fan of play safe more often than not. Um, I think it also becomes an issue when you're dealing with kids. Um, Keep in mind, like especially infants, toddlers are far more sensitive to changes in their body chemistry than adults are. So if you're having your kid eat a bunch of Flintstones gummy vitamins because he won't eat his fruits or vegetables, so you're trying to help him get his fruits or vegetables in, and or trying to help him get his vitamins and minerals in. So it's like we'll give him a couple gummies and he'll be good. But there are some very harmful side effects, potentially lethal side effects to that, particularly when it comes to excess iron in the blood. So there is a medical condition known as hemochromatosis, which is essentially far too much iron within the blood. Iron being one of the main things that helps your blood clot. Which obviously, if you have a cut on your arm, you want your blood to clot because it's going to help close up that cut, and then you don't lose any more blood. Everything's good. If you've got such excess blood or such excess iron within your blood, it can start to cause clots to form throughout your system, and obviously blood clots within your system can eventually lead to things like heart attack and stroke and what's called ischemic events. So taking a heavy iron supplement when you don't need it is not a good idea. Same thing, there have been studies a while ago that linked excess calcium intake to things like heart disease and heart attack. Calcium scoring being one of the tests that they do to try to determine what your risk is for heart disease and heart attack, which some doctors will say is a far more accurate and more appropriate way to test for those things as opposed to just simply looking at your cholesterol numbers, which cholesterol, like I said, is a pretty complex topic. If you're looking for more information about cholesterol, definitely check out Chris Kresser, MD. He's a functional medicine doctor out of California who's an absolutely brilliant guy and has just done such amazing work on this stuff and made it. He gives you a lot of the scientific nuts and bolts, nitty gritty of it, but also makes things relatively easy to understand, even if you don't have a heavy background in this stuff. So like I said, multivitamins, it's just kind of a little bit too broad. I would rather that you kind of looked at your diet from a whole and said, what am I deficient in? And some of the food apps that you plug your diet into will tell you, you might be a little low in potassium, below what the recommended daily allowances are, the RDAs, which are set forth by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. So that's something that can be helpful to you is if you put all your food into one of those apps, it can tell you a lot of times what vitamins and minerals you might be missing out on. And then obviously it's like, okay, if I'm low on potassium, then I should look up what foods are high in potassium in order to help kind of supplement that in. Which, once again, I would rather you got the majority of your nutritional intake from whole food sources. So sometimes foods get a good reputation for certain vitamins and minerals and things like that and people tend to think that's the only one. If I say potassium, most of you are probably going to say banana. It's just kind of become locked in with that. But we forget that like tomatoes and avocados and other foods like that are also really high in potassium, which can be really beneficial to you too. Potassium supplementation, especially excess supplementation, has been linked to a lot of heart issues. So that's definitely one you want to be careful with. It was really big in the bodybuilding world for a while to take excess potassium in order to help drive more water out of your system. It was kind of an extra diuretic, so it would help you look more lean on stage. A lot of times, things that are done within the bodybuilding industry are not healthy at all. They look amazing. They look like Greek gods up on stage. They're right at the point of passing out because they've dehydrated themselves down as far as the body will allow and basically still be able to stand up. Obviously, there's a lot of calorie restriction that goes into it. There's a lot of really unhealthy practices that will go along with that. I've heard of competitors also taking like shots of vodka before stepping out on stage once again to make their veins bulge out a little bit more. So obviously, I don't think anybody is going to try to argue that vodka is a health food. At least I hope not. I know it's made from potatoes, but I really feel like that one's a stretch. Kind of like whenever you see a study that says like, oh, well, a glass of beer a day is shown to help prolong life, and it's always sponsored by Anheuser-Busch or something like that. So, yeah, the only one that's really been kind of shown to be beneficial long term is a small amount of red wine per day or every other day for the resveratrol. That's kind of the only alcohol that has been shown to have any sort of like a therapeutic medical benefit. But in the end, I enjoy beer from time to time, but you do you. So, another reason why you want to be careful when it comes to any kind of food supplement is that there's a lot of things that are banned. And the reason why they're banned, how about something like protein superfood powder? My boy is 6 and eats fairly healthy, but I do give him a daily. I'm sorry, Alex. Is that second one a question? Is it you already give him the daily multivitamin, or you're thinking about getting him one? I'll get back to that. But basically, there a lot of times because the industry is very unregulated, you'll have supplements that have heavy metals or other drugs in them, things that are distinctively unhealthy. But once again, you have to prove that one, that they were found in a high enough dose in order for it to be detected and to have caused significant harm. And to getting something pulled off the market is a fairly significant process in and of itself. That's why you'll hear about these big lawsuits of have you been a victim of this coming together years later. So you might not hear about it at the time, but it is definitely something to be care of. Protein superfood powder. Protein powder, a lot of times it's going to be you get what you pay for. The super cheap, especially like the Walmart brand, Body Fortress and Six Star and that kind of stuff, are usually pretty much garbage. It'll have some whey protein in it, but like I said, it's going to have a lot of extra contaminants and things. And just because in order for something to go through the purification processes, in order to meet what would be a good laboratory standard, it costs money, and you can't sell 2 pounds of protein at $8 or whatever it is and still be able to make a profit unless you're selling just a ridiculous amount of them and still be able to adhere to those kind of strict standards. That being said, there's certainly some protein powders on the market that are just way overpriced and kind of ridiculous. I once again, not being a registered dietitian, I can't say to you person there who's watching this right now, you should be taking this supplement, because if I did, I would be held liable for that. But what I can tell you is that a lot of the protein powders that are made from egg whites tend to be lower in contaminants, if at all, just because it's an easier one to process and manufacture. There's less separating that goes along with it. So that's something that if you were to look at a supplement, the egg white protein one tends to roll pretty well. I also, and this is just kind of a personal pet peeve, but I know a lot of people out there that might be watching this right now. You might supplement your income by selling certain supplement brands and things like that. I would ask you to question how much you really know about the brand that you're promoting. If it's worked well for you, great, awesome. But keep in mind all the things I've talked about as far as personal liability. And I don't know, if I were to sell a supplement to somebody and anything bad were to happen to that person, I know I would feel personally responsible for it. If they had, a bad reaction as a result of taking something that I personally sold to them. So I really want you to take the time to do the research and not just reading the label on the product that you're selling or the little pamphlet that comes with it. Find the peer-reviewed studies. Check out weexamine.com or just examine.com actually, is one that goes through and does some really diligent testing on a lot of different things. And they'll be able to tell you a lot of times whether or not what you're selling is legit. It's a lot of snake oil a lot of times, it's like, oh, well, here's this, amazing food protocol, and, they'll put lots of fancy names with it and things like that. And it's only going to cost you, $350 a month. That's not an insignificant amount of money. And it's something that, once again, I understand it's a business. You're trying to make money. I do give my kids a multivitamin daily. Not sure if that's beneficial or not, the protein superfood. So what I was saying earlier is that, especially for kids, I think it's better to get a blood test done, to find out if they're actually deficient in any vitamins or minerals. So that way, if you can try first to supplement with, or try first to boost those up with whole food sources, and then if you're finding that they're still deficient, then you can do targeted supplementation. If it's like, okay, my kid is totally fine on everything except for her B12 and magnesium. Once again, you can get those through food sources, but if it's just not quite enough, then you can do more targeted supplementation, as opposed to just trying to take this shotgun approach and just potentially overloading their systems. Now, with water-soluble vitamins, it's usually less of a risk, because your body is 70% water, so it processes those things a little bit easier. But with your fat-soluble vitamins, specifically A, E, and K, you want to be more careful, because the body doesn't process those quite as easily. So that is just something to watch out for when if you're going to give your kids vitamins. Something like creatine. Creatine monohydrate is the most researched supplement that has ever been released to the public, and is generally considered safe for consumption. But it's usually going to be more beneficial for athletes, and you need to make sure that you're taking in a lot of extra water, because it does put a significant strain on your body's systems, and it's helping. Well, if you remember a few weeks ago, we talked a little bit about your body uses 3 different fuel substrates in order to fuel its activities. Phosphocreatine being the first one of them, which is like your short, fast, explosive movements. So lifting heavy weights, sprints, things that are going to be like 30 seconds or less, maximum effort. That's where the phosphocreatine system kind of does its thing. So creatine supplementation, if you're into those kind of activities, can be beneficial. Some people also look at it by doing kind of a loading phase with creatine, where you're trying to help boost your body's normal levels of it. I was just going to ask about the supplement and your thoughts. Hey, see, Chandler, I can read your mind even through here. It's amazing. Scary, huh? But yeah, so if you have topped off your body's levels of creatine either through food, usually you're going to get your best doses of creatine through red meat, from a food source. But if you are adding in an extra supplement on top of that, there is just a point where your body just can't take in anymore. And so trying to put more and more on top of that isn't going to be beneficial. It could potentially be harmful, as with anything else. Some can be good, too much is not good. Always a balance to try to keep in mind. But that's always been the biggest concern with creatine, is that you need to make sure you get plenty of water to go along with it to help your body process it. Branched chain amino acids is another one that's become really popular in the past few years. I've talked about those a little bit before, especially as it relates to intermittent fasting, that a lot of people who like to do kind of the lean gains protocol or other intermittent fasting protocols, if they break their fast right after their workout, which if you look at the word breakfast, that's literally what that means, is you're breaking your fast. You're fasted overnight. So if somebody was doing, let's say, like a 16-hour fast, and they were going to go to the gym at the end of their fast, then taking an amino supplement right before that workout might not be a bad idea, because then it's going to make sure that you've got those acids to put into your body, which will help you prevent excess muscle breakdown, and it'll help potentially make your workout more beneficial and effective, and you'll be able to recover a little bit quicker from it. Outside of that, the majority of the meta studies have shown that branched chain, if you're getting, because proteins are made up of branched chain amino acids, especially whole proteins. So if you're getting in enough protein outside of that kind of specific need right there, then supplementing with extra amino acids isn't really going to do you much. Once again, it might not necessarily be harmful, but it's certainly not going to be beneficial. And yeah, as with most, it tastes good. You know, you're basically spending extra money on expensive water. It does also, like, Extend is a really popular branched chain amino brand. It actually does have a good amount of electrolytes in it, so those kind of things, that can be something that can be beneficial as well if you are in need of electrolytes. Once again, we talked about that the majority of people don't need anywhere near as many electrolytes as they think they do, and certainly not from something like Gatorade that's just like packed full of sugar. Which that was a really common thing for a while too. That so creatine works best when it has some carbohydrates to run with it. So for a long time, you would just buy just straight creatine monohydrate powder, which is just bland and nothing, and have like a glass of fruit juice to go with it. Yeah, totally fine, whatever. As long as you're not diabetic, obviously, then you want to make sure that you're controlling your sugar spikes and that kind of stuff. But then you had the supplement industries tried to do both together. That we're gonna give your body carbohydrates in order to help process this creatine, and you're getting like 60, 80 grams of sugar with one drink, which is like 3 candy bars, and it's ridiculous. Nobody needs that much all in one whack. So you always want to be careful whenever you're going to be deciding to supplement with anything. I know I kind of once again, just kind of grazed the surface of this. One thing I did talk about a few weeks ago that I wanted to elaborate on a little bit was, hey Kim, oh thank you, fish oil supplementation. I had mentioned that a little while back, which saying you can do fish oil, krill oil. They're all kind of good to go as far as for boosting omega-3s. Once again, take a look at your diet as a whole. If you're not getting in a lot of omega-3s, then supplementation can potentially be beneficial. But don't just look at the front of the label where it says 1,000 milligrams, 1,200 milligrams, whatever it is. Make sure that you turn it around to see how much active EPA and DHA is in that fish oil. Because if it says 1,200 milligrams fish oil, but you turn it over, it only has 300 milligrams of combined EPA and DHA, which are the two actual like omega-3 beneficial fatty acids that we're trying to get from fish oil supplementation. Then you've got 900 milligrams of filler per serving, and you're paying for nothing. Once again, it's better to invest a little bit more, get the better quality stuff. You won't have to take as many pills, and then you won't have as many fish burps. The ones I usually take tend to have a little bit of a lemon flavor mixed in with it, which kind of helps suppress a little bit of that fish odor, which your spouse may thank you for. Like I said, I know I kind of just touched on a bunch of different supplements throughout here and kind of talked about the industry in general, but hopefully that gave you guys some insight. If you're looking for more in-depth work on this stuff, you can contact me. I'll be happy to help point you in the right direction. Again, Chris Kresser, if you guys haven't looked into him, is a phenomenal resource. Oh man, I can't talk today. For a lot of this kind of stuff. But I had a kid who hated vegetables of any kind this whole toddler and adolescent life. He's 37 now, super healthy and loves them. Yeah, Mom, you did all right. I do eat a lot more vegetables now than I did as a baby. Treese Young is my mother, for those of you watching. She loves to chime in and make fun of me even to this day, so which is great. But hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Stay safe and healthy. We're still waiting to hear from the governor when we'll be able to reopen the fitness center and the club as a whole. In the meantime, though, our salon is open for limited services, and starting tomorrow, the restaurant here at Hampshire Hills will be open as well for takeout and limited outdoor seating. So please call ahead, and hope to hear from you soon. Take care, guys.